If you hate a person, you hate something in him that is part of yourself. What isn't part of ourselves doesn't disturb us.
Chris Hero is a lot of things. Knockout artist, super nerd, long Kevin Smith, and the last couple of years, someone who's tried his best to give back to the indies. And, also, he's a cunt. I don't know him personally. I'm sure he's overall a very nice man, he probably doesn't litter or speed in school zones, and I'm sure he loves puppies. But just like anyone else who's abrasive, opinionated, and once again, a massive nerd, especially in his early days, he could rub people the wrong way. Lord knows I probably have with some of the more bombastic statements on this channel. It's a consequence that comes with the territory of being the way I am. But as Hero began his indie career, he was known for coming off poorly at times, with that sort of CM Punk brand of polarizing people around him, though not quite at the level of Phil himself. I'm sure this both hurt and helped his career, but what a career it's been since then. This is a man who's put on epics with Bryan Danielson, received an elbow pad from Misawa before witnessing his tragic passing firsthand, had a run in the Fed, and now works as a producer where the best wrestle, occasionally bearing witness to sucker punches and or guillotine chokes. He's one of the best American wrestlers from the 2000s indie boom, if not of all time. He has very nice hair. He's also a cunt. Eddie Kingston isn't sinless either. He's a bit abrasive, to say the least. While I, and by extension this video, are definitely biased towards the man, I'm not going to pretend as if he's completely faultless in his feuds. The man doesn't really specialize in de-escalation. Quite the opposite, in fact. Whereas Hero first and foremost idolizes Misawa, Kingston idolizes Kawada, the pillar more underserved than the master of the Emerald Flosion, making King a Leviathan-style holy demons advocate. This maps weirdly well onto Hero and Kingston, as it took Eddie longer than Chris to receive his flowers. Obviously that's even more exaggerated on a national stage, but even within the indies it took Eddie longer to come into his own. And rather interestingly, he's even begrudgingly cited Hero as helping him early in his career as a trainer around the time both were involved in CZW. Eddie is a brawler from Yonkers, completely unapologetic about who he is and how he feels about those around him. He's a man with demons trying to walk a heavenly road, and that path has set him on a collision course for similarly unapologetic men like Punk, Danielson, and this wrestling genius that lies before him. While different in background and styles, Eddie and Chris are very similar characters in my eyes. And somewhere Mr. Kingston is probably popping a vein for me saying this, but that's sort of a leitmotif amongst his most prominent career rivals. It's nerd on nerd violence, one of the most potent sources of destruction in the known universe. Eddie might be a cunt. The feud between the two reportedly has shoot origins, and I fully believe that. There's clearly something palpably hateful between these two, a resentment manifested in beautiful bloody conflict, once again evoking shades of Misawa and Kawada. The key to this beef is the lesser-known original tag partner of Eddie Kingston, Blackjack Marciano, a fellow Yonkers product who was a close friend of Eddie. Marciano, like Kingston, was in part trained by Hero, but things turned sour at some point during Marciano's time in CZW, and before long, he was out of wrestling entirely. Eddie places the blame for this on Chris, with the following quote from a 2023 article by the excellent Phil Schneider titled "Eddie Kingston Specializes in Vendetta," summarizing the Mad King's perspective.
I used to drive home with Blackjack out to shows, and he would just be so despondent. Because Hero would just fucking hop on him and beat on him and just basically use the kid, you know what I mean? When Blackjack left, I blamed Hero for that.
Blackjack and Eddie were of the same mind and style in career goals, and the Wildcards aspired to be one of those old school heel tag teams going from territory to territory pissing off the local favorites. And being honest to goodness heels in the Jim Crockett / Memphis sort of way. With Blackjack gone, Eddie would have to rethink his trajectory. As an ancillary note, Blackjack was truly quite good at wrestling, and I would recommend checking out matches from him, as he clearly had a really good understanding of wrestling early on. That's the story, and it's incredibly compelling. I truly believe that Eddie is telling the truth here about the origins of the animosity, but how real the actual intentionally booked feud would later be is up to interpretation. Where does the work end and begin? How much of those matches and promos are real? The question is interesting, but in my eyes, the answer doesn't matter. Personally, I like being worked, an increasingly unpopular opinion in the Fightful era of wrestling, where backstage heat is reported on by a billion dirt sheets and circulated online as soon as it emerges. I enjoy living in a weird kayfabe twilight zone between fact and fiction that evokes an older era of the sport. That's what makes it this surrealist industry fun and different from anything else. This ambiguity is where someone like Eddie thrives, things you'll see even in his high-profile AEW feuds. To quote historian Pierre Bryan, "Even if it is not true, you need to believe in ancient history." While not ancient history, an implication I think both men involved would resent despite the creaking joints they experience these days, I choose to believe. And as the curtains open on this epic of blood, bruises, and broken bones, I invite you to believe every word from both men's mouths and feel every strike. While by no means the first in-ring meeting between Eddie and Chris, this is their first singles match since the dissolution of the Wildcards, who had their last match about 7 months prior to this one. As a note, I'm going to try and focus on the big singles matches for the most part, as if I included every tag or multi-man match between these two over the time period of the feud, this video would be 3 hours long, and as fun as that would be, I would also die. But I will give recaps when directly relevant with the overall plot. For similar reasons, some singles matches will also be omitted, as they got booked against each other in every indie on Inoki's Green Earth during the time period, and not all are particularly relevant to the larger narrative. I'd like to credit the numerous wonderful folks who've archived not just many of the matches, but the promos, as well as Brock Hates Wrestling, who has reviewed every match in this feud, including the more obscure tags. To avoid any appearance of plagiarism or impropriety, I will disclose that I have looked at his timeline as well as Cage Match to find my list of matches, but I have not read any of his reviews to avoid influence. I will link the blog below. Back to the match at hand, Chris enters first, making a mockery of Eddie's style sensibilities, from how he dresses to the culture he comes from, thoroughly being the bastard man we all know he is in spite of his very nice hair. In sharp contrast to the bombastic hero, Eddie arrives with quiet intensity, almost more scary than his more usual bluster. He's got that husky kid at the pool shirt and funky pants combo, and his body language says that he wants blood. Uncharacteristic of King, but very much so Hero, we begin with some very basic chain wrestling, with Hero taking the piss while Eddie looks on, King responding with a slap to the face. Hero rolls out to receive medical attention before returning to the ring, and we receive typical fare from each man. Hero with his cravat holds an elbow, King with chops and suplexes. Eddie's bridge on his Northern Lights suplex in particular is insane. It's a level of fluency in the technique you normally only see in Joshi wrestling, where the bridge is marginally easier given that they all weigh under 100 pounds. Very atypical of his style, Eddie even goes for some head and arm chokes, starting from the front headlock before going to the scarf hold strangle. It's batshit insane to see him doing this, and Hero's escape is so beautifully dickish as he kips out of the hold. Cravats are traded before we fully get to the head drop indie fare you'd expect. Hero lawn darting himself into a strike to the back of Eddie's head, and both men fleeing themselves into each other and the turnbuckles. Outside interference helps Chris get back to the driver's seat before going back to the mat, applying a really nasty chin lock with the arm captured. He works over the Mad King both inside and outside of the ring, mean mugging the crowd until Eddie is able to take things back to even with a killer lariat. You can tell these gentlemen have some genuine disdain for each other as they put their full bodies into every chop. It really elevates it beyond the regular indie chop battle that goes on for far too long, as they truly try to cave in the other man's chest. As we approach the close, we get some more explosive offense. Chris Hero goes for a cravat neckbreaker off the top turnbuckle, and Eddie throwing his beautiful Hurricane to Enziguri combo that's reminiscent of some shit Yuri Prochazka would actually attempt in a fight. Eddie pulls the ghillie of all things, but a distraction and interference by that bastard, Claudio, leads to a cheap pinfall for Hero. This is the first battle of a war, and Hero has established what the terms of it are by playing dirty. Hero has mocked both Eddie's character and the sport by cheating to win, so anything is on the table. 3¼ stars. A month later, and Eddie has continued his pursuit of Hero, fighting him in a 3-way match with Tank, as well as an 8-man tag where Eddie initially focused on fighting Claudio before locking onto Hero once again. He would finally get his chance for another singles match at Chikara Negative Balance. In a promo before the show, he once again displays a demeanor uncharacteristically calm of the Mad King. He maintains that he built this company, this is his territory, and that Hero is a fake motherfucker. That sort of talk could be typical pro wrestling fare, but as Eddie enters, any artifice or pomp is stripped away, and this is two men who hate each other. Eddie's entrance following him from backstage through the tunnel is awesome, reminding me of some of the All Japan entrances from big cards, in particular Misawa backstage before 6/3/94, which may or may not be intentional given the dorks we're talking about. Not concerned with playing to the crowd, Eddie walks straight to his opponent, chest bumping him and not breaking eye contact. Despite his obvious nerves, Eddie locks in and throws up the ever-deadly finger gun before the match begins. Much like before, we began with some heated chain wrestling, and Eddie gives the impression he's continued to prepare for Hero, doing some great wrestle-ups from the front headlock and flipping position until he's allowed back up. Each man wants the back, but neither can keep it, and the chippy exchange leads them to the turnbuckle. Eddie takes control and imposes his will, battering Hero across the ring, off the ropes, and finally sitting him down for more punishment. It initially seems like Chris is going to cut him off with a series of disgusting forearms, but Eddie kips up and tosses him out of the ring. Hero tries to flee but is told to go back. The onslaught continues until Hero, once again outside, brings things roughly back to even, a boot on the outside looking particularly gnarly. He even escapes what shapes up to be a nasty piledriver by King, hanging on just enough to dump him and avoid taking a year off his life. The man who loves to rep Superman decides to take to the skies, smashing King into the barricade before returning to the ring and unloading. King manages to strike back with a thunderous belly-to-belly, which rotates in a way to almost make it half rock bottom. I find myself having trouble really articulating how fun these matches are, as a play-by-play doesn't really do it justice. Most of the matches are relatively basic, strikes, whips, and slams. What draws one in and renders them unable to look away is the energy and intensity both men display while doing it. You get the sense that this is their thinly veiled excuse to legally hurt each other. And the sense that this could boil over into something ugly, which we know it will in hindsight, makes you want to watch it just as much as the very good in-ring work. Amidst his comeback, there's a really nice little detail by King after a stiff jab by Hero. King sort of starts chewing, working his jaw almost like he's trying to get it to pop after the hard hit. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but definitely in line with the guy who studied boxing knockouts because he heard that Kawada did the same. Same as the previous match, drowning in the indie head drop exchanges, Hero goes for the submission hold, slowing the explosive brawler. We get a chin lock, cravat pinning combo, and cross-face chicken wing all very shortly, with the latter being pulled backwards into an almost crucifix-like position that reminds me of something Aaron Blanchfield hit on Tracy Cortez recently. Although despite pulling the dead ringer for Janice the Muppet backwards like Hero did, she didn't trap an arm. After repeatedly failing to put King away fairly, Hero cheekily uses his wrist tape while applying a scarf hold, something he's caught for only after King grabs his face to resist. An awesome superplex leads to a double down, and the two seem visibly exhausted as they resume exchanges. Eddie pulls off a dive to the outside of all things, but it really turns more into a tackle as it bangs Hero's head off the railing. After being taken back into the ring, Chris begs for mercy but will receive none. King popping his ult and ragdolling him with a series of strikes and slams before he's redirected into a rapid slam and senton by the wrestling genius. Hero goes for the half grab and then transitions to a cravat, all the while keeping the leg trapped. Eddie manages to get to the ropes and we move towards our finish. A ref bump followed by a low blow allows Chris to hit a low blow and get the pin. To be quite honest, it is very little build-up and is slightly underwhelming, with it and the slightly repetitive action rendering the match less than the sum of its parts. That being said, they're still reaching towards something greater, and as the two continue to try and kill each other, we will get there. 3 stars. In a theme that will recur later in the feud, the following contest is a last man standing match, which, as one might expect, plays in perfectly to the knockdown, drag-out nature of these gentlemen's matches with one another. Hero enters first and seems to have come dressed as Gumby with love handles, with a decidedly audacious green outfit that reminds one that this is in fact CZW. Accentuating the majestic hobo oil barrel fire that is this sacred ring, Eddie comes out in Steve Austin cosplay, repping the Blackout 420 shirt. What's interesting to me is that this is the first match we've seen where we see the Eddie we've come to know and love. He's completely goddamn manic as he comes out, smiling before adopting the dreaded sponge gar fighting stance, popularized by fellow Puerto Rican icon Low Key. While spoiler alert, this is not the best match in the feud, it is however really fun as the energy is just absolutely infectious. Hero stooges perfectly as the match opens, as Kingston has counters to all of his regular chain wrestling. I don't want this video to come off as me just always praising Eddie. Chris is wonderful here. He makes himself so hateable in a good way. And his willingness to eat shit and look like a complete goober here says a lot about him as a worker. I think Chris, first and foremost, knows how to work a room. And as he definitely appeals more to the smart crowd, myself included, he plays up that nerdy vulnerability when in an environment like Prime CZW, where both half the roster and the crowd are actively doing bath salts. It shows a lot of humility from him as a performer. Eddie chases him out of the ring and beats the shit out of Dog everywhere on the outside, literally just strangling him Homer Simpson style for the pure pleasure of the act. Unfortunately, playing with his food renders Eddie vulnerable and he gets flung into the corner. Hero tactically using the baggy 2000s clothing to his advantage. While the knee-cut jorts may be an effective weapon of intimidation as used by John Cena to show his foes his utter depravity, they do however allow for an easy grip on your opponent, like a judo gi but with more G-unit. Playing up that aforementioned perception, Hero teases a chair shot and instead applies a cravat. The corn worshippers, deprived of the offering of a skull for the skull throne, cry out in rage. Eddie rallies back and applies one of the more fucked up things I've ever seen, a full Nelson eye gouge combo. Hero is able to regain control, however, and takes King back to the ring, kicking in the first of the 10 count sequences. Whereas last man standing matches can often feel mechanical, cough cough WWE, cough cough, I love how chaotic and ugly this is, as it so often devolves into two guys just actually fighting each other with disgusting street fight tactics. Things more or less occur as we become accustomed in these matches until Hero sets up a table on the outside, attempting to put Eddie through it with King rolling off at the last second. Eddie is finally able to powerbomb him through the table after using the ropes to his advantage, flipping momentum. Things remain knockdown, drag out through the closing stretch, both men visibly exhausted as Hero sweats through his Gumby suit, but Hero proves to be more inventive. He counters an Hurricane attempt, first looking like he's going to hit a reverse DDT, before hitting the dreaded ass kick to dick kick combo, an inventive dirty finish if I've ever seen one. The mark of a wrestling genius. Hero gets the 10, hulks out, and leaves triumphant. 4 stars. This is heating up. This match comes after a wee bit of a time gap, as both men were involved with the ROH vs CZW feud, leading to one of the best indie matches ever in the Cage of Death, Hero being matched against that goat-faced clam digger Bryan Danielson. And facing the Barbarians at the gates, he's become more of a, wait for it, hero in the eyes of the crowd. Kill me. Kingston has been feuding with noted roid Neanderthal, deathmatch promoter extraordinaire, and car driver Zandig, which has stalled out his momentum at least in comparison to Hero, as Kingston has hoisted the CZW tag titles. Seemingly just to one-up his foe, Hero has won the CZW world title, and King has had to jump through hoops to challenge for it, facing Claudio in a number 1 contenders match, losing it, and then still will somehow end up getting the title shot. CZW booking is weird. I don't know what to tell you, man. Tonight there's an open challenge King will show up for, which does sort of bury the concept of the contenders bout they just had, but hey, what do I know. King arrives to the sound of Ennio Morricone and promises to bury Chris. This is now or never. After King has made his entrance, Hero emerges looking in peak shape with his trademark logo. If he's going to knock off CZW's best, King also has to be at the apex of his abilities. Having dropped so many matches to the Genius so far, Eddie really needs this win, with just as much as he needs this title. As things kick off, it's blatantly evident how familiar these two are as dance partners at this point. In addition to the training time spent together, they've wrestled so many times that they simply have this down to a science, displaying their shared hatred with a fair amount of shoving amidst the chops. Each match has gotten progressively uglier, and Eddie begins actively aiming for Hero's eye, catching it with a boot before his foe returns the favor. Given the likelihood that neither man had health insurance at this time, this is a wild move. Eddie tanks some more shots and double legs the champ to the ground, diving into his guard as the two wildly thrash and roll to the outside. While still going back and forth, Eddie is fighting with a sense of focus we haven't necessarily seen yet, as while blind hatred has been serving him well as a way to channel his strength, he seems to be registering each move and responding in turn. His offense is still wild, but when you see him get hit with a big move, more often than not, instead of wildly charging back in to return fire, he grits his teeth and composes himself. Hero instead is the one more full of hatred, as he beats King on the outside, a headbutt to the corner looking particularly sickening. Hero gets too greedy by trying to land a kill shot on the apron, which leads to him getting his shit kicked in by Taz-style crossface strikes back on the ring. Showing how he's prepared for Hero and learned, Eddie navigates the front headlock fluently. As much as he'd hate me saying this, it appears that Chris has taught him far more than he lets on. Over the next few minutes, it's fully the challenger's fight. He seems to have every Hero counter scouted and beaten. The only abject brutality that can bring Hero back to having a chance is a wild back of the head, elbows, and knees combo, which I'm sure is the new tech Michael Chandler will use to finally win UFC gold. Hero hulks up against weak-looking chops from King and begets violence with violence. Gone is the Chris Hero who teases a chair shot to the crowd. He's no longer in a position comfortable enough to clown like that. Pulling a spot I would most associate with Mystico, oddly enough, after banging King against a pole, Hero walks back towards the tunnel before stomping King with a full run-up, although Mystico would usually do a crossbody. After more cravat work, shocker, Hero tries to make the cover with a boot, but fails. Eddie tries to rally back, but Hero hits the final evolution of his obsession, a twisting cravat cutter from the top turnbuckle. It's cool as fuck. I think I replayed it 4 or 5 times when watching. Someone steal this ASAP. King hits a beautiful Uranage, but suddenly a wild ruckus appears, confusing everyone involved. However, a Havana Pitbull emerges and hops the guardrail, teasing Kingston before hitting a suplex on Hero. Kingston capitalizes with a bone-crunching lariat and makes the cover. 1, 2, 3. Despite a cheap-ass finish, Eddie has taken something from Chris Hero. Despite all the losses prior, those were ones where he had nothing to lose but his pride. Here, when it counts, he has triumphed. It's obviously a little anticlimactic, but also karmic justice, as Chris has cheated so frequently, often with the help of Claudio or a good match that resurrects a dead crowd, but is hampered by the screwy finish. 4 stars. Coming to the next year, a rot has been spreading through CZW. The booking is still weird and bad as titles are vacated left and right with no explanation, everyone is not so secret heat with each other, and people are heel and face turning left and right. Hero and King are actually part of a double turn as Eddie once again pulls a Homer strangling spot. What follows is just really unsatisfying, as Eddie becomes a cowardly heel mid-title reign and something that never really would suit him. Because that wasn't bad enough, in an elimination match with Chris in Justice Pain, Kingston breaks his ankle and then gets his foot shoot twisted to tap out and then is eliminated first. This sets up a Justice Pain title reign where he just injures people left and right, proving that while he is capable of a good match, he is also a gormless ape. I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, well, this is wrestling, too ill, He was battling demons, but it's just sort of emblematic of how this initial core group of talent CZW had began to fray. Whether accidental or malicious, the top champ is going full grug and injuring people. And slowly everyone Zandig can't pay directly in drugs or concession food or leaving the roster. This kind of logic leads to moments like the trainee battle royale, easily one of the most unsafe matches ever had. While I can't verify this without talking to him, I'm assuming money is what leads Chris to leave the promotion alongside general dissatisfaction, and he's booked in a loser leaves town match against the Mad King. Whenever Eddie talks about his matches, he more often than not refers to them as fights. I personally enjoy this because it's the character of Eddie Kingston talking about kayfabe fights he's been in. We like to analyze match structures. We divide them into heat or control segments, talk about finishes or comebacks as units of a rigid formula. But truly, if you were in a sporting bout where you got hit with a chair, suplexed, or even you just had your arm twisted, you would consider it a fight, not simply a sport. It's why we call MMA fights, fights. In that sense, all of the Hero and Kingston matches are fights. But this match might just actually be one. There is no art, there is no quarter, there are no clever callbacks. Quite frankly, this is not for the crowd, nor is it for us. It's for two men to do street beefs under the thin veneer of a wrestling match, merging stiff indie head drop fare with all the poise and tact you would find in a brawl outside of a Waffle House. And what is CZW in this era but the Waffle House parking lot of promotions? Before the match, at least a dozen event staff are there to keep order as the men enter. They should have sent double that, as immediately after hitting a turnbuckle taunt, Hero charges his foe. The staff hastily shove Hero back into the corner so that they can ring the bell and count this as an actual match, a really funny move to show the promotion in kayfabe is basically trying to herd cats. Somewhere, Violent George Costanza smiles down upon this clusterfuck as volleys of strikes are thrown. In keeping with my assertion that this is a fight, they're just hitting each other back and forth in combo. There's none of that regular wrestling rhythm where one pauses for crowd reactions. It's actually kind of jarring in a good way. You won't notice it until it's gone. The selling from both men is immaculate. They're grabbing their jaws, shaking their heads, and looking rocked after every combo. They're visibly not pulling kicks, so it's probably not exactly all selling, more like power slap with wrestling moves. It takes several minutes before anything that's not a strike is hit, and then a few slams are nothing but a brief reprieve before the onslaught is continued. Neither man is shooting in the sense that they really want to finish the fight and come out the winner. We'll see that later. No, it's both more and less professional than that. They were paid to go out there for 20-something minutes with a predetermined winner, and on a route to it, they're going to hurt each other as much as possible without serious injury. A milestone for the feud is hit when we achieve some lovely, lovely color. Hero smacks his head like a crazy person before diving to the outside and headbutting King. The way each man falls from it is truly sickening, and both men run the blade with their downtime. I truly love how deranged Chris is in this match. His very snarky usual presentation has given way to something more bestial. It wouldn't feel nearly as special if he was like this all the time. Of course, he is not quite the freak that King is, and it becomes evident that this style of match is far more in the wheelhouse of the Yonkers native than the scientific mat work that defined Hero's efforts earlier. Chris rages against his possible expulsion from the company, but Kingston is too psychotic. He's randomly chewing, twitching, and letting out non-verbal animal noises more akin to Frank Silva's performance as Bob than typical pro wrestling. Kingston button mashes and hits everything that's hurt Chris before, suplex and lariat, before finishing it with a back fist. Afterwards, Zandigism ensues as the boss man himself emerges, graciously putting over Hero in defeat as a vital part of the company and one that will be missed. Kingston, however, despite winning, is less appreciated, flipping both out and off at Chris before fleeing to the locker room. It's then that Zandig absolutely buries King on the mic and fires him in addition to Chris. This was all for nothing. Both men are leaving the territory. Weird, bad booking? Yes. Thematically satisfying for two men to be rewarded with their hatred of walking papers? Slightly yes. I think with more finesse, this could have been a really great angle. where you basically sell that CZW is sick of dealing with these two constantly having pre- and post-match brawls, and they're washing their hands of the feud. But that would be a little bit too smart for this promotion, so we get this. 4.25 stars. With both men becoming stateless, this feud will bleed into many other promotions. Speaking of carny freaks, let's go to the blessed land of the Midwest, where Ian Rotten holds court. Will there be good matches? Of course. Will people be paid in IOUs and handshakes? Buddy, you have no idea. Out of the frying pan, ... Welcome to IWA Midsouth, ladies and gentlemen, a promotion near and dear to my heart despite, the promoter. Ian Rotten's science experiment to see how little he could pay wrestlers without being jumped in the parking lot held host to many great indie matches during the 2000s. This, of course, being one of them. Based out of the blessed Hoosier State, the promotion helped launch the careers of the Second City Saints and even to an extent Hero himself. So perhaps it's fitting that after fighting across the East Coast, they end up here. In the hallowed halls of the Don Preston Rec Center, the two do battle. Quite funnily, and honestly very common for cards of this era, this match, which has gone down in history far more notably than anything else on the night, is only the third to last match, not the main event. The quite frankly bloated card had the eponymous Ted Petty Invitational as the supposed primary draw, with the tourney bouts going on before and after this grudge match. It's really funny to imagine watching a bunch of 8 to 10 minute tournament matches, then watching this bloodbath, and then be expected to go back and be invested in the tournament. I can only imagine what was going through the heads of these bloodthirsty freaks. Perhaps tired of waiting for their cue, the two decide to start the match early, as the entrance turns into a disgusting brawl when Eddie jumps Chris and bites him against the wall, before gouging his eyes as well as against the concession window. Eddie tries to swing back against the wall once more, but Chris uses his long frame to stop and reverse his momentum, hitting a gnarly headbutt. Far from the typical wrestling headbutt we see in the States usually, we've entered full bachi-bachi style head-to-head connections. Those gross collisions where they just thrust their heads like they're trying to put it through the other man's skull. The brawl leads to Hero splayed out on a table, and neglecting to actually put him through it, Eddie instead opts to just hurl a trash can at him, eschewing what would be typical pro wrestling in order to show how utter his disdain is for this man. Flying out of the trash can is a glass bottle, which shatters against either the ground or the wall. It's very hard to tell because of the camera angle, accentuating how gritty and dangerous this match truly feels. The crowd demands that Eddie pick up a shard, and the man obliges, Chris cutting him off by hitting him with a table. There's no way this could have been planned. So for all we know, Eddie might have actually been about to shank Chris, Black Terry versus Mr. Condor style, and Chris's table improvisation was an attempt to stop himself from being mutilated. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but really funny to consider the implications of it. Real glass, cry me a river. A vertical suplex finally puts Hero into the table, but not through it, and the commentary helpfully notes that it's not a regular gimmick table, but a spooky one. Hero's selling, or just perhaps legitimate back pain, is delightful, as is the aforementioned Battle Arts headbutt spot that follows. This is the kind of violence that gets someone fired from CZW evidently, and slowly but surely the two fighters actually make it towards the ring but not into it. Eddie along the way giving his usual verbal promises to his foe. The fighting ringside is frantic and gross, no clean moves or transitions, just strikes and eye gouging. It's only at nearly 8 minutes into the match we actually enter the ring, Kingston rolling in Hero after multiple attempts prior. In most matches, however loosely structured, now would be the time where the wrestlers get their shit together and start hitting actual moves, but this is a demented version of their previous Chikara or CZW matches. For instance, Hero goes for a boot to the corner, but it only grazes Eddie. Instead of pushing him back and then throwing a strike or keeping the leg and going for a submission or a dragon screw, King just hoists the leg and dumps Hero to the ground, the genius following it up with a dropkick that fully lands. Everything is a little off in a good way, as the regular flow of wrestling moves is made just a little uglier, a little jankier, a little more brutal. We've expunged any cooperativity from this performance and just left a brawl. The introduction of chairs is when things get properly gross, and Hero starts to showcase his creativity. An all-out brawl will inevitably favor the Yonkers native, so things have to get more into the realm of PWG spot monkey madness to favor Chris, which leads to what I can only describe as a spinning chair splash, as well as using the chair amidst a Boston Crab to sit back onto King, which is just diabolical. This amping up leads to King's nose getting busted open, which adds some beautiful color to this offering, and I'm pretty sure it's just actually broken. Instead of hurting him meaningfully, the broken nose just pisses him off, and King rallies forth, hitting a double leg followed by a really bad looking guillotine. It is then we properly arrive at Head Drop City as both men swing and or bang back and forth, giving the audience what they expect from an indie third act, albeit much more rough around the edges. Some highlights include Hero adding a chair to his spinning cravat cutter thingy, and Eddie hitting a gorgeous Snapdragon suplex, but the guardrail being brought into the ring signals the end hath cometh. Hero almost puts King away with a stomp on the guardrail, which has been laid over the fallen brawler, but he makes it up at the last second. The guardrail gets tossed into the corner, and the two jockey for position trying to throw the other into it, just like one might if there was a board with barbed wire on it set up. Hero tries to rake the eyes and kick King, but eventually Eddie wins out, crunching Hero into the railing with a backdrop suplex. Just like that, he's won. This is probably my favorite match out of the feud, due to its careful balance of structure and breaking down into something more primal, though some might prefer the previous match. 4 3/4 stars for me, the best of the feud. Unfortunately, this feud can only go downwards from here, and while that still includes some very good stuff, it's gonna get weirder and uglier. Finally completing a literal coast-to-coast tour, this feud is spilled over to California, where our combatants have been competing in some tags primarily consisting of Chikara talent prior to this one. Super Dragon Esquire has seen fit to book the two in a singles match, and thus a few months after losing a few years off their lives in Rotten Land, we find them here. Same as the previous match, we neglect to waste time actually getting to the ring in order to begin. Hero's entrance gear still being on as they begin the brawl. The handheld shots following them to the ring before they cut to hardcam and the darkness of the venue combine to make it seem like we're not supposed to be watching this. A candidness that contrasts how washed out the Mid-South match looks, where someone forgot to white balance their camera evidently. Some truly awesome strikes are thrown on the outside until finally, after a few minutes, they make it to the ring. The loose bottom rope seen as each man powders in, forecasting how God will intervene to stop this bout. Big slam and suplex spots are more articulate in this match than prior ones were, as we get more fighting for each one, feeling very much like the King's Road both men love to emulate. Truthfully speaking, there isn't a ton to say about this match until the finish. It's brutal, yet not as much as the previous two matches, has a bit of fun finesse and reversals, but not as much as the early feud matches, and more so exists as just a nice little 10-minute sampler of the action that tells this PWG crowd all they need to know about this feud if they hadn't been following it previously. In some ways, I think it feels like a game ported to a different console that loses a bit of the punch. But this also could just be that they faced each other so many times at this point that anything not as bombastic as the prior two matches feels like treading water. Unfortunately for Chris, treading anywhere would become exceedingly difficult, as he injures his knee midway through the match. Something small injury-wise must have happened very early. All the action looks great, smoothly going about their formula, but at some point once in the ring, Hero's mobility looks off. But finally, shit hits the fan when it's time to go for a drop kick to the outside. While the setup looks normal, as soon as he plants on his left leg while running, the steam seems to go out of him, and despite grabbing the rope in time, it ends up being less a kick and more a face wash hit on air. Eddie is ready to sell it, and still sort of does, ending up awkwardly slumping to the barricade as Hero writhes in pain, hopping on one leg. They do actually a really good job of trying to make the finish look natural despite the injury, as Eddie swarms in trying to finish off the injured opponent, but Hero is able to roll him up. The pinning combo he hits is actually pretty stellar, as he cradles him before kicking his own legs off the mat and into the air to put extra weight on Eddie. It's brilliant work, and almost reminds me of when an MMA fighter injures themselves and has to pull guard as their last resort. Hero's attempt here being much more successful. It's still a weird and sudden finish, but the match, all things considered, is still good fun. 2 3/4 stars. Well, this is a big one, in terms of the feud existing as a tangible, shoot bout of hatred. The match itself is quite good aside from the finish, and unlike the other matches I reviewed in depth, this involves 2 more combatants for a 4-way match. What do you add to up the ante when 2 guys already hate each other? You book them with both Necro Butcher and Low Key. Famously, nothing has ever gone not according to plan with Key involved, so I assume this is going to go great. As an important note, the PA system is actually out for this card, so everyone has to improvise to the best of their ability. Eddie makes his way out first, looking like he's feeling himself as he bumps some tunes on his MP3 player, followed by Necro shambling like the trash homunculus he is, and the Key sponge-garring as Key is wont to do. Eddie ignoring the crowd and just listening to his own music is a great bit of heel work and really accentuates the character. Hero's entrance is both silly and fun, as friend of the channel Dino Winwood sings that song I used in the Bob Sapp video ahead of the champion. While I have said mean things about Hero thus far, I will say his hair is on point for this show. He has ascended from long Kevin Smith to hipster Thor. Making the post-match clusterfuck even funnier in retrospect, the tone is incredibly light as Eddie dances outside the ring, then snatches the title and takes off with it, finally dropping it at a table before coming back. The silliness combined with the knowledge of what happens afterwards, and furthermore later in the match, almost makes it feel like pleasant dinner small talk at the Red Wedding. Despite Eddie not being the best cowardly heel in CZW, I think that just how much fun he's having here makes it work. As in CZW, the mid-title reign turn made him come off as miserable. Sick of his shit, everyone in the match hits him at the start, and he once again runs off, Necro giving chase. Eddie tries to straight up leave, and Necro assumably wants to butcher him, leading to a hold-up as the venue owner tries to sort it out. Completely unrelated to the clusterfuck going on outside, Hero and Key decide to have a mini shoot-style match. Hero going for a crackdown, Key countering by trying to crucifix him, and the 2 spinning around trading back tags. 2 separate matches ostensibly occur at the same time, in the ring and outside of it before they crescendo into each other, and the greater structure reveals itself in a really fun way. Eddie beats up Necro and Hero, forcing them out of the ring so he can face Key solo. This dynamic repeats itself multiple times, people almost tagging in or out with brief interferences from a third man. What little we get of Eddie and Chris here is of course good fun, but some of the bite is of course taken away by just being a part of a larger indie plunder match. As expected, all men take to the ring for the finish, where Hero hits a truly vicious series of strikes topped off by an elbow that makes the cover, all the while he attempts to submit Necro. Something hilarious is that the referee tries to raise Hero's arm, but he's tired and doesn't get up, so the ref just has to resort to pointing at Hero and indicate that he is in fact the winner and has retained his belt. While I think the match is a lot of fun and will award it a generous 3.5 stars despite my general disdain for multi-man matches, the crowd is largely unsatisfied by the finish. Hero, thinking on his feet, responds, and how he does so has gone down in infamy, although it's very fun to watch. Hero buries Eddie on the mic as being unprofessional and no-showing shows, which, as I understand it, is true to some extent, in an attempt to win the crowd back, and Eddie responds with physical violence. Although Chris did start to kick him with assumably worked strikes just before. Giving an insightful and very professional fight analysis of the action will be the ever-eloquent Just Taking a Walk.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Just Taking a Walk. I'm here for the Walk It Back podcast. I'm here to do a little bit of analysis for a Chris Hero and Eddie Kingston shoot fight. I'm expecting a lot of very professional moves. I heard Eddie Kingston has had a couple Muay Thai fights. I'm excited to see what he can do from the clinch. I think Chris Hero has done a little bit of like actual catch wrestling, but I cannot confirm those claims. I could be making all of that up. All right, we're starting off the clip, and Eddie Kingston has got a hold of a single leg. I'm pausing here. He's holding on to it, not in the worst way you could. Preferably, you'd want the foot to be between your legs so you can go for you could throw him down. He could alternatively be trying to go for the double leg, but we'll see. I'm pausing. Yeah, look at that. He's going for the going for a double leg, but Chris Hero has the expert idea to beat Eddie Kingston over the head with a microphone. As you can see in the paused part, the entire mic has blown up by this point. Eddie, not a lot of pickup to the double leg. He's kind of just pushing him against the ropes, which would be really good in a cage situation. Excuse me. But I mean, you know, we're not in the cage, we're in the ring, and Chris Hero's tall enough to where he can't really fall through the ropes like that. I'm pausing. Big elbow from Chris Hero. Really fairly looked like a fairly worked elbow. I am paused, by the way. Looked fairly worked, but he had fairly good striking mechanics. Oh, it looks like Chris Hero got a hold of that Muay Thai clinch, and I think he knees him. Let me see. Knees him right in the solar plexus, it looks like, and then goes for, again, solar plexus, 2 solar plexus knees. 1 to the face. Massive chop to the face. I mean, I personally probably wouldn't go for the big chops. If I was in an actual fight. Oh, looks like Eddie Kingston going for one fairly delicate straight, and then Eddie's trying to grab a hold of him again. Oh, he's working for back control. Eddie Kingston, that is what you want to do if you actually are on the ground and have a hold of somebody's back. I mean, standing up, Eddie could jump up and try to hop onto the back of Hero, but right now he's just giving him a nice hug. A nice little hug. Oh, pausing at 2:13. Eddie Kingston has a hold. He's on the back. If Eddie, he's pretty worked up right now, so I imagine he isn't thinking about choking him out. But if he wanted to get that RNC in, he'd want to. I think his left arm, he'd have to unlatch the seatbelt. He would try to sneak his hand behind try to sneak the hand around the neck, and then move his right arm to behind the neck of Hero in order to get the choke in. But I mean, overall, I think he's just trying to stop him from hitting him in the face, because he did eat a lot of knees during that interaction. I'm pausing at 2:30. Good guy Excalibur separating them, and that looks like the end of it. Thank you Squill, thank you Samuel the editor. Yeah. Listen to Bolt Thrower.
This clusterfuck of a shoot has fascinated wrestling fans since, and is impossible to omit from a full retelling of the feud. Both combatants have been forced to recount this shoot over and over again for clicks, so I didn't really want to rehash their testimonies. Instead, I reached out to a friend of the channel who was actually there in person, the aforementioned Dino, who gave his eyewitness account of the day and of the shoot. Given that, once again, I'm compromised as an observer when opting on who to blame, or what happened, or whose fault, which I really don't think is appropriate here in the first place. It's clearly a miscommunication that leads to just a very unfortunate incident. I wanted to provide an unbiased account of the story. Huge thanks to Dino for agreeing to talk once again. Can you speak to what the general mood was, like backstage before the show and as the show's going on?
Yeah, the mood for that show, particularly All-Star Weekend and everything, much like every other show that we would have, just the excitement was very, very thick. Like you literally could just be stacking up chairs and you're just like, oh crap, like this is gonna be filled with people later and like it's gonna be loud. Like it's a show day. Like everybody gets excited for show day, and it's like waking up for Christmas, but you got to go to work. And yet at the same time, oh my God, yeah, we're wrestling today. It's very exciting.
So famously in this show, the PA system is broken, and you end up singing Hero to the ring. Who made the call for you to do that? I'm curious.
If I remember correctly, it was Hero. He's always, he was very much a believer in the things that I just do. And I think we very much, because he ran to me, he's like, hey, do you know Streetwise Hercules? Your theme song? He's like, yeah, you know, would you be okay singing me to the ring or something? Because I'd sung before. I sang Quicksilver out to the ring, and so he remembered that, and he's like, could you like sing me out to the ring? I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Like, it's anytime anybody needs help with something, and I remember like everyone was just running around with a chicken, you know, a head cut off situation. Yeah, I just told him like, you know, we'll do it as the song is. We're not gonna rush. We're gonna do the build up. Don't you worry. And so, you know, Eddie had his method of doing, which is totally brilliant. I cannot stress that enough. Eddie Kingston coming out with his iPod, listening to his own music, getting to his own groove to get ready for the match.
When we get to the main event, overall, it's like the kind of indie plunder multi-man match you kind of expect. Get people trading off, and you get to the finish, which is Hero pinning Kingston, while he has a submission locked on Necro Butcher. Do you know how much thought was put into the finish beforehand? Because of course this happens and the crowd hates it.
Yeah. So when it comes to working matches and anything else, like it's very much just a filled small, and I mean small, locker room filled with 20 to 30 people. Everybody picks their corner and they come and gather to work everything out. I mean, from what I recall, it seemed like there was everything in the main event was at the time of Hero being in there. It seemed like something was planting a seed for the next month, like really just planning it all out. And so, to my understanding, it seems like there was going to be more usage of Kingston based on this finish. But other than that, like I never really saw too much conflict in the finish or anything else. But much like, you know, just wrestling matches in general, sometimes an audible is called, sometimes something is miscommunicated. Because again, physical activity with communication is definitely a juggling act.
And so, of course, afterwards, Hero gets the microphone. He starts to verbally tear apart Kingston. Things escalate, eyes are gouged, people are bitten, the microphone is thrown. Yeah. How soon after that happened did you start to understand what had happened?
I recognized that things were starting to go a little south when it looked like no strikes were being added into it, and it very much looked like a power struggle. And I'm like, oh shit. Is anybody gonna go in there and do something? This is very awkward. This is not part of the show. Like the panicking stage in my head is very much like, I don't think this is part of it. And the fact that the crowd even noticed it, you very much can see life turning down the volume of anything, even breathing in that room. It was so awkward.
You have the last couple like CZW matches before this, and then of course the IWA Midsouth matches, where there's that weird thing where sometimes it just looks like they're actually fighting and they'll mix it in. But what's so interesting about me as you're talking about how there's not really any striking in the beginning, Hero then, it's almost, I don't know if he's trying to get him to snap out of it or something, but Hero starts throwing like work strikes in the corner. Yeah. And it's like, what is he trying to do here? Because he is, on one hand, actually fighting him. And then it's like, pro wrestling, buddy, pro wrestling, come on.
Yeah. It very much seems like that was the case, because that's where the confusion was starting to go in. I'm like, oh, there's work punches. No, I don't think they're working. Like, you might need to put a little pepper on those. But I mean, I never knew of the history between them really until that very evening. I'm like, guys, what the fuck just happened? And there's like, oh, they got like a history of beef. Like, it's always just so awkward, or they don't like each other. And I'm just like, really? I never got that. Like, I would only catch the matches where, you know, they would work, and that was that. And damn, they put a lot of emotion into it. That's pretty good. But I did not know that it would come to this awkward silence of a confrontation. To which I was like, well, that sucks. They're both really great. I enjoy their work individually and against each other. And like, damn, I did not know that it was this heavy.
How much time did you spend around King prior, like during his PWG run?
As much as I tried to, because like I always admired his work. I loved his commentary. Like, he was very much, he's a very impressive worker and just an interesting guy in my opinion. And like, I grew up, my uncles were gang members. I got the vibe of like, okay, this guy's seen some shit, but like, you know, I don't want them to feel like they're having to be a loner here or anything else. But I always say, hey King, how you doing, man? Great to see you. I really admire your work. Oh, thanks, I appreciate it. You know, whatever. I can't help but jump into an Eddie Kingston. Anyways, the guy's got one of the best voices ever.
You're there backstage after this happens. What's going on with Hero?
He is very much nervous, pacing a little bit, trying to keep himself composed, because Chris Hero is a pretty chill dude. From my experience and from a lot of people that I've talked to, like, and even the famous video footage of the backstage altercation at All Brawl Out, he's very chill, even in his most nervous. He's just like, okay, just like, shit, I didn't want any of this to get crazy. This is what I love to do. What happened? Like, he's very much collecting himself, and I'm going around to the best of my ability as, you know, commissioner. I'm like, are you okay, buddy? He's like, no, I'm fine. I'm just, okay, no problem. I'll give you your space. But I think Kingston actually bolted a little early, understandably. Like, you know, he's very emotional, but
you just fought the world champion of the promotion.
Yeah, legit. Yeah, it was so tense at that time, and like a lot of us were just still, you know, naturally talking about it after we had left the venue. Like, what the hell just happened? But yeah, Hero very much looked a little distraught about it, and you know, I guess he felt like it reflected badly on him and anything else. But yeah, man, nothing, no chair throwing, no swearing, no blades, no whatever you might hear, but you know.
And this is just speculation, but do you think he regretted having like cut that promo that seemed to prompt all of this? Not that like, so like definitely this channel and me, just because of my experience with Eddie, I'm a little biased towards the guy, but it's like, it's like obviously it was uncalled for Kingston to attack him. However, I don't know if Hero had to bury him there. Do you think Chris felt he shouldn't have done that afterwards, or no?
You know, from him at the time, it seemed like he might have felt he laid it on a little too thick.
Yeah.
Because when you love pro wrestling and you do it for a living and everything else, you figure anybody else who's as ride or die for it as you can take whatever is dished out, and you know, sometimes you go a little heavy on it, especially with the adrenaline going and everything else. But at the same time, like, a lot of things don't get discussed. I mean, you've heard about the Cody incident from when somebody mentioned Dusty on the microphone, and then he had to put that shit in check. So I think it's very much along the line of maybe some things should have been discussed as to what was to be said on the microphone, but at that time, you really didn't do that. It really was just, we're here to do a job, we're doing our professional stuff, we're gonna get the heat up. But I don't know, man. Sometimes the passion of it tends to get a little in the ways of logical thinking, and I think that he very much, in some ways, like, regrets going a little too hard on Eddie at that moment. But at the same time, you know, mistakes were made on both sides.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not trying to say Eddie's blameless here.
Oh no. I just like to say that, and you know, I'm very much in the picture of like whoever's listening to this or whatever.
Yeah.
Firm believer in putting your feet in both shoes. But yeah, like again, nobody was innocent, but then again, nobody was just guilty. It very much was just a bad miscommunication, and it really sucks when two great wrestlers come to the actual blows in something.
The result of the incident is the end of Eddie's PWG run. Although strangely enough, it would not be the end of him working with Hero. It's not exactly surprising that the promotion wanted to cut ties given the incident, and might actually be more so that this feud would continue. Where? Of all places, Ring of Honor. To just say up front, this match is not great, but a necessary evil to bring this feud into the promotion. Alignments have once again flipped due to a new territory as Hero is heel and Eddie the face. Hero's whole shtick at this point is based on the loaded elbow pad, and he's as much the cowardly heel as Kingston was all the way back during CCW. The pre-match talking head interviews are incredibly charming, and lead in well to providing the crowd with a little taste of what these guys are all about, if they hadn't been already following them in PWG and CCW. Chris, of course, had already been working in ROH a little bit, Eddie with a few matches here and there, but this is an introduction to how these two feel about each other. Making the most of their time allotted, it's an absolute clusterfuck from the start, King just actually chasing Hero into the ring and outside of it, grabbing for his leg before teeing off. Hero once again is in great shape here and hits a great senton onto King after stacking padding onto him. It's a really funny as a spot, in my opinion, as exposing the hard floor is seen as more dangerous, so putting the padding that protects you from the hard floor onto Kingston should take the oomph away from it rather than make it harder, but whatever, it looks cool. They pretty much just hit all the beats they're supposed to until Eddie refuses to comply with the referee's instructions and knocks the ref out, leading to a DQ. 2 stars. Crammed onto a stacked card, this match is fairly average in quality in terms of the feud, which really isn't an insult given the high floor and tremendously high ceiling of the matches we've seen thus far. It's largely a victim of what's going on around it, as the latter war between Steen Erico and the American Wolves had just gone on directly before, and still to come on the card was the Young Bucks versus the Briscoes, and none other than Bryan Danielson's then last ROH match ever against Nigel McGuinness. So yeah, it had a bit of a disadvantage in wowing the crowd, something I think both competitors kind of feel as it goes on, but not in the beginning as both guys are full of energy. No doubt, pumped up from what's happened thus far. Both guys seem almost giddy as Eddie does his little nervous shadow boxing thing and Hero bounces around. It's kind of adorable to see given the real life heat and the fact that their last meeting was that clusterfuck, but if Dino's opinion is anything to go off of, both men likely regretted that as soon as it happened. And in some strange way, they might have missed being able to tear into each other, but that's just speculation. The opening minutes are frenetic and bouncy, with whatever that old ROH ring is made of having so much give it looks like a trampoline sometimes. Their strikes have a little extra something on it as well, and whether that's receipts for the shoe fight or trying to win the crowd over, you decide. Try as they might, no matter how hard they hit each other or how fun their guardrail spots ported over from CCW are, the crowd simply aren't receiving a blood offering with the same ballast fervor the tag teams gave them. The violence gets even more visceral as biting and clawing by Eddie gets some color from the forehead of Hero, and they get some time to let it breathe as Eddie tortures him in the ring. Ironically, despite the brawling nature of these matches, my favorite bits of the feud come from the bits where they're just torturing each other. I think that one can actually get tired of just strikes, but maybe that's just because I've watched over a dozen matches for this video. The closing bomb throwing section is great, and because both guys have spinning strike finishers, and it feels absolutely electric as they try to predict and counter strikes with strikes amidst some great head drops. Unfortunately, we get a loaded elbow pad finish that kind of deflates things, but this is not the blow-off match in ROH, so I suppose it's okay, as Hero uses the pad for the finish during a ref bump before covering it up afterwards. These two are working so well in spite of a dead crowd and that finish, and it's still pretty great. 3.5 stars. This is it, ladies, gentlemen, those who lie betwixt or outside, etc. The last of the matches between the two for 5 years, and appropriately held at one of ROH's year-end final battle shows. Once again crammed into a big card, this time at the end of the first third of the show, King and Hero are going to show how damn good they are when facing each other by making the most of the time they have, just over 15 minutes. It shouldn't seem that egregious that a non-title feud imported from another promotion doesn't get a lot of time, but the main event is a 60-minute draw between Austin Aries and Tyler Black, something you would need a loaded gun to get me to watch, and even then I might choose the bullet. This match is a fight without honor, and this extends to the entrance as, wait for it, Hero is jumped, and they're off to the races. Both men are clad in ill-fitting shirts and brawl until a much-needed addition to the formula is added in the form of a chain. Assisted by his goon, Hero wraps the links around King's neck, and even in his mouth, finally initiating something as brutal as they had devised in the IWA match. He really milks the weapon spot to its fullest, upgrading the previous whips into the barricades and the turnbuckles with the chain. Whereas it felt at times previously they were simply hitting their marks outside of the really big matches, there's a sense of escalation here as we get the culmination of the proprietary formula that's been developed over several years of extreme pain. King finally starts to get fire as he bleeds from the forehead, eyes glazed over into that same demonic look he had in the famous close of the Anarchy in the Arena match. As I've said before, King is way fucking scarier when he's quiet, and his zombie death march is kicked off with a bitch slap that has a ton of heat on it. Hero keeps peppering him with shots to bring him down, but Eddie counters a powerbomb with an incredibly rare and sudden Hurricane Rana, something that made me audibly say, oh shit, when viewing it for the first time. It's a really well worked comeback because there isn't a clear point where Eddie just clearly reverses momentum like in most basically structured matches. Little by little he starts giving more than he gets and capitalizes on the unexpected counter with a fuck off Uranage. Both men start flying across the ring, the intensity naturally building, and each man goes shirts off. Much like before, there's a sense that the granite chin of King is going to win a slugfest, and Hero needs a forearm and 2 elbows in a row to sit him down. To beat King fairly, or at least as fair as a literal fight without honor can be, he's going to need to go from mean to downright disgusting. Hero decides to reintroduce our old friend Mr. Barricade, and the two engage in a duel for the right to smash the other through it just like the IWA match. Except this time, it's laid between the second ropes in the corner, flat. Chris wins this race to commit a felony, going to the top of the turnbuckle with King, pulling him up for the powerbomb, and then holy fuck, it basically turns into a Gonzo bomb. The Mad King dropping headfirst through the metal, like Ric Flair going headfirst into a pile of blow. Hero goes for the cover, just using his head to shove him over his back, and we get 1, 2, 3. King kicks out! The crowd can't believe it, and it's kind of a brilliant escalation, as the guardrail spot finished the IWA match, but not this one. Hero tries to go back to the chain, but Eddie is able to use it for himself with a chain-assisted lariat looking amazing. Seeking to kill King's momentum, Sarah Del Rey attempts to intervene, which is totally legal, but Kingston employs an equal opportunity leg capture suplex that removes her from the formula. Finally, using Hero's own loaded elbow pad, King puts him away for the 3 count. Justice is served. This is not the best in the feud, but it's unique, and there's something that feels so raw and real as King gets emotional post-match. 4.25 stars. If you've noticed from the match ratings I've been handing out, just based on the average match quality, this is probably the lowest of any of the feuds I've done major videos on, from Dragon vs. Morishima to Dragon vs. Kingston to Volkan vs. Kiyoshi Tamura. Obviously that's a high bar, and it's not as if this feud is really any bad matches, but it also has something that none of the stories have. Reality. Sincere, real, gritty hatred. The probably exaggerated, or else they wouldn't have been able to work together, but nonetheless genuine disdain they have for each other adds a texture to this whole tale. Aided by incidents like the PWG shoot, it brings into question how much of this is a work, and how much of this is just 2 men working some shit out on a public stage. Each promo that bites the bone, every match works snug, every spot that looks a little dangerous, they're all part of what makes this so unique. Additionally, I find the way it hops from promotion to promotion incredibly unique. Each time it changes venues, they likely reconfigure their alignments, characters, and how they interact with the crowd, all the while keeping the core of what they do well together. They're perfect dance partners, and professional to a fault in that they can't help but have good matches. I also find it charming that even after the shoot, they come back and still work with each other. Did they make up to an extent behind closed doors? Did ROH simply give them enough money to make it worth it? Who fucking knows? And I don't care about the answer, but the question is fun to ask nonetheless. This is gritty, indie dirtbag Brett vs. Sean, only way more morally ambiguous and with much higher match quality. With one of our principal characters mostly retired and the other probably due to do so himself in the next 5 years, we'll likely never see another chapter in this feud, although there were 2 more matches between the 2 years later I didn't include just because they're one-offs. As much as it's AEW tradition at this point to fight your co-workers, I think the 2 more mature versions of Hero and King will abstain from future reprisals against each other, as funny as it may be. When I talked to Kingston for our first interview, he talked about how much he hates their matches together, because they hurt like hell to do. I have no idea whether I was talking to Eddie Kingston or Edward last name redacted on that question, and I enjoy it that way. The 2 certainly regret the blow-off shoe incidents, and probably hated that they had to keep working together at the time in spite of how good that work was. But perhaps it's been long enough that they can sit back and enjoy what they worked so hard to accomplish. Chris and Eddie are very similar men who have walked paths that keep bringing them back together, be it as combatants or now as co-workers. Each are generational talents, wrestling geniuses, and wrestlers I'm grateful kept working even when it was hard to work the indies. They're also cunts. Okay, so this last part is just me talking unscripted because I kind of want to give an update to the channel. This channel has always been sort of predicated on the fact that I have been a undergraduate student working on my bachelor's, and I've had a lot of free time because of that. You've noticed probably the videos have slowed down. Last semester I was working on my bachelor's thesis, and then this semester I'm just working hard to graduate. This summer, I'll have to be starting to work full-time for the first time in my life, which, you know, boo-hoo, poor me, whatever. But then, in addition to that, next fall, I'll be starting my master's. As of now, I don't really know what that schedule is going to look like. Maybe I'll have more time than I think I do, and maybe it'll be hell. Who knows? But regardless, if and when I have time, I'll keep working on this channel, but you can probably expect it to be a little bit slower. As much as I would like this to be a full-time gig, unless Tony Khan throws me a bag or I finally get that Yakuza sponsorship, you know, that's far from the case. But hopefully sooner than later, you'll hear from me again. To anyone who has subscribed, donated money, even just liked a video, watched one, left a comment, whatever, I thank you. When I started this was nothing more than a vanity project. I was very influenced by Joseph Montesilio, Andos, you know, all my buddies I've collaborated with before. And it was just something I wanted to do as a one-off with that Sheamus 5-match primer. But I got really positive feedback on that, and, you know, I made the Thatcher video, which popped off in a way I didn't expect. And here I am having, you know, some moderate success in making these things. And it's crazy that anyone cares. So I really appreciate it. I love you all. Bye.